Yeah, so in this latest study that we did, a lot of the day-to-day research was carried out by this brilliant student that I had, so Lisa Luan, that completed her PhD. One of the things that we found while we were doing it is that roughly 60% of people had these entity encounters, and we probed it in real time. So we literally asked people throughout the experience, are you seeing an entity, yes or no? And some people rightly argue that that disrupts the experience, that is somewhat invasive, but in the trade-offs of what we were trying to do, which is mapping these encounters, it was the best approach. And the molecule is so effective that even if you take them out for a second, they go back in. That's what we found.
Oh, wow.
We found that there's a lot of variability in that. So some people find it overwhelming. Some people find it incredibly pleasant. And most people have variations within that. There's a story that it's playing out. In the analysis that we're doing, the phenomenological analysis that another person from our team, James Sanders, is still doing. We'll get them out soon, I hope. One of the things that we encountered was first that there was different styles, right, of how people engage with it. So some people, for example, go through an initial shocking phase, and they go through a challenging, making sense phase, and then eventually they get to what we call the fruits. They get sort of like the advantages. They have learning experiences. A good example is a participant, for example, who first they were transported to this, what felt like an alien world. And in that alien world, they encountered a being that was taken to be a giant spider, threatening to kill the individual. And then as the experience progressed, because it was so long, the participant comes to the conclusion, oh, that spider is my partner, is my wife. And there's clearly something showing up about the way that I relate to my wife.
Black Widow.
What seemed to be like, exactly, like something menacing is a part of her that I need to come to terms with, or I need to work out with her, and so forth and so on. So that's the insight, that's the fruits. Some people jump straight into the fruits. Some people just go straight into an amazing ride. They really enjoy, they get incredible insights and benefits. I've had a few participants, one of them, for example, who has since called me and says that he has stopped drinking altogether. He was having a lot of problems with his family because of it, and spontaneously out of the experience and the insights, he came to he went through a personally meaningful change because of that. But that was a fairly general pattern, the first one that I mentioned, that there's a lot of the experience that feels completely extraordinary to individuals with DMT generally. With the extension of DMT, we found that there is something happening where what feels alien, what feels strange, what feels magic many times starts to become a thing of everyday life. It starts to become something that is familiar. The alien becomes familiar. The metaphysical becomes personal over time. And this is not that dissimilar to what many people also recount when it comes to ayahuasca experiences. This is why people consider it to be not just a sacrament of sorts for religious practice, but also something that is personally meaningful and therapeutic. And so I think one of the conclusions that I got from it is that a lot of the strangeness that comes from DMT potentially comes from a novelty impact factor. There's an element of being shot out in an altered state of consciousness that is so fast that the system does not have the resources to bring in a coherent narrative, a coherent thread into it. And so it becomes alien, it becomes strange, it becomes alternate. And then as the story progresses and the robustness of the brain comes back online, things become familiar. I think the common appreciation is that it's more the second on what you say, that you're in for just sort of accepting whatever is presented to you. We know that scores of agency go down in these intense experiences, especially with DMT. There's evidence that supports that. But one of the interesting avenues of research that I'm particularly curious about is how is it that people can cultivate agency when navigating these states? And there's different ways of seeing agency. One is the most overt way that we conceptualize it, which is literally controlling your environment like a magician in that state, because let's say it's caused by resources of imagination. So the same way that you can control your imagination, you can control your experience. But there's also much more passive ways to think about how you can navigate that experience. The kind of actions that you do. People in ayahuasca experiences sing, for example, as a way to control their experience. So with that in mind, we recently had a shaman from Colombia, an expert in navigating these states. And we haven't published this yet, but the results are quite fascinating. That we saw that when he was receiving the DMT extended, he started to sing in repeated occasions, naturally. And I asked him right after the experience was over, why were you singing? And his response was, well, I sang because it allowed me to quiet down the intensity of the visions. It allowed me to communicate with the entities and sort of interact with them, as opposed to simply, receive whatever was going on. A way to create agency. And then I looked into, and then I did the brain analysis on it, and lo and behold, those signatures version of brain activity go down after singing.
Interesting.
And so there's this realm of research that has not really tapped into this active component of the user in psychedelic states in general, not just in DMT, that I think it's opening up and an intriguing avenue of exploration, of thinking of expert practitioners and how agency can play a significant role for the purposes of which psychedelics are used. In our studies, we have not found a massive recurrence on the types of entities that people are seeing. We see some entities are like clowns or jesters. Some entities are very reassuring, comforting. Some entities are mysterious. Some entities are generous. Some entities communicate. Some entities don't communicate. So all kinds of manifestations. People have often described that they see praying mantis or insects. We had none of that. Some people mention machine elves. There's one of those memes that was created some decades ago. None of our participants saw any of that. But the fact that entities arose is an important commonality. And we saw, our latest research, we saw that in 60% of the cases. Another commonality is the vividness of these fractals and geometries. That is not something to be discounted. That is an important recurrence. Another commonality that we have found is this feeling of being transported into a place and having a feeling of immersion, an embodied immersion in that. You're not seeing it, but you are in a 3D space.
You are there.
And so those kind of processes, I think, are more interesting in terms of the commonalities, because they speak firstly about more fundamental cognitive processes rather than specific content that I suspect is very culturally determined.
Yes.
In ways that that a lot of people don't like to think about, because I think it breaks a bit too much the mystery of DMT.
Right.